start on transactional analysis, which for me is another potent force in the psychological world, and it fits in perfectly with what we've done so far. That being psychodynamics and attachment theory. It fits in with both of them perfectly well. Here we go. We cannot control our history, our childhood. However, we can control what we do about it today. We can't change the past, but we can change the way we operate in the world today. Judging by what we've learned, by how enlightened we are, by how much material we brought from the unconscious into the conscious. So if we are not aware of our childhood script, which we'll do more of tonight, then we grow blindly in the dark, pushed and pulled by forces that we feel, but do not understand. This is really pertinent. That's why people go down. They get enveloped, if you like, or overwhelmed by feelings, but they don't understand what messages them feelings are bringing. In every feeling, packaged, cocooned in every feeling, there's a message. There's a group of thoughts. There's a message there for you that will help you. And that's why we've got to go beyond feeling. Otherwise, we will literally just go down. If we go into our feelings, to our depression, to our sadness, to our overwhelmed regrets, guilt, whatever it might be, if we get bogged down by the feeling, we'll never get the message that's enveloped within. And that's why it says there, so you're pushed and pulled by the forces that we feel but do not understand. That understanding of our feelings is crucial. You've done loads of that now. You understand. You should not, even now. I mean, we're not even a quarter of the way through, are we? The course. But now you should be understanding why people feel the way they do. Okay? And that, for therapists, is crucial. It's crucial for self-development, Tracy, you know, and lots of other people I know in this room are going through self-development. It's a wonderful, wonderful life when you start to understand. Free yourself of the binds of the past. Unleash yourself from the binds of the past. Take control of your life, which is this next bit. When we are aware of how our childhood conditioning has affected our responses, then we have a choice. Then we have choice and control, and we're liberated. It doesn't mean that we're going to be like this 24 hours a day. Quite the opposite in some ways. It means that when we're sad, we're going to be sad. We're not going to go on scripts and conditions of work that say, you shouldn't be sad. We should be sad. We're meant to be sad at times. Okay? We're meant to be happy. Also, I think the goal of every other goal is the pursuit of happiness. That's probably what we all want, ultimately. So I urge you on this course to find out what really floats your boat. What really drives you as a human being. I'll tell you some of mine. Travelling is one, obviously, she might be doing lately, and we've also seen Joanne's travels as well, and the way that sort of, for me, the way that gets me spiritually, mentally, very, very clear, very focused, but it gives me inspiration. When I go into beautiful surroundings like that, it inspires me. And normally, lots of ideas come up. That's one thing. When I come home from that holiday, I went to a place in Wales and I picked up one of my guitars and I started playing some classical guitar music, which I haven't done for years. I used to be an entertainer, I used to play all the music, you know, the old ones in the clubs, like, and all that stuff. But I started playing some classical stuff, and again, I felt this like sensory acuity to get in touch with what, I don't mean what just makes you a bit happy, I mean that literally makes you thrive inside, switches you on. And when I started playing that classical music, and it was slow because I haven't done it for a while, again I got this absolute, it's like what people call the peak experience. They're the things that will sustain my happiness through life. And I urge you to find what yours are. Yeah? There I go, off on one again. But transactional analysis, this is to do with transactional analysis and psychodynamic work. What it's saying is basically getting to know how we've been affected by the past, because how we've been affected by the past manifest primarily as feelings in the present, and the causes of them feelings are generally unconscious. And when we know what's causing the feelings, then we have a choice. We can either abide by what's driving us from the past, stick to it all our lives, become static, or we can say, that no longer serves me. It did when I was a child, but it no longer serves me now. Therefore I'm going to let go of it. Remember that a belief is only an idea we hold to be true. It's not universally true. I'll keep repeating that. If it doesn't serve you, let it go. But do come in alignment as well. Purpose, as people who've read the books, purpose is immensely important in our happiness as human beings as well. We can get rid of our past, we can resolve our childhood issues, but if we've got no purpose, I've seen many of my friends die because of that. They work through the childhood stuff and whatever, but at the end of it, there's no purpose there. So they drank again, most of them are dead now. You know, that's the way it works. So, transactional analysis, first of all, this idea come from a chap called Dr. Eric Byrne. And we've got a transactional analysis that's in the room that you have me in Turing. So we're going to watch a video on Byrne. He wrote a book many, many years ago called The Games People Play, and there's a couple of old footage of it. Normally I do it right at the beginning, but tonight I'm going to do it in the second half because I want to push on with some of the theory, and I don't want to keep stopping the camera all the time. So we'll look at that in the second half. So transactional analysis is a model for understanding human behaviour and the psyche. Okay, most models are, aren't they? It's another model. Remember that the mind is intangible. We can't grasp it with our physical senses. Therefore, these people who come up with these ideas formulate models, which are ideas of how the mind may work. And I find the ones that we've done, object relations, Freud structural theory, attachment theory, which we've touched on, and transactional analysis, probably the most powerful of them all. And they all fit hand in glove, these. The other ones not so much, but these ones do. So developed by the late Dr. Eric Byrne in the 1950s and 60s. A useful model for showing how people are inhibited by destructive patterns. That's what we do as therapists. We identify destructive patterns. TA is based on 3 philosophical principles. These are important. People are okay. We all have worth, value and dignity as people. At times I may not like nor accept what you do, but I always accept who you are. Label the act, not the person. That is fantastic as a therapist. Okay? Somebody who comes to you, you're probably not going to get these, but let's take them extreme. Someone who comes for murder and needs counselling because they've murdered somebody, let's say. You might be full of fear, you might not want to see them. You're not likely to see them at all, unless you work in prisons and stuff like that, possibly then. But you may find out, you know, your initial reaction to that might be, oh, all murderers are bad. So you label the person, not the act, as being totally that person. Then you start to work with the person, I know this through experience now. I don't have to go through all that fear and all that apprehension if I get something big, because I know through experience most people who I've dealt with who've been through things like this are decent people. And this is why we're saying here, label the act, not the person. Because if we were going to judge that person on that one act, then we would never speak to him again, would we? Label the act, not the person. When a person comes to you, if they've done something bad, they're not inherently bad. It's a bad act, it's not a bad person. Okay? Most often it's not. Right? So let's just do that again. People are okay. Okay? This bit. But I always accept who you are. Label the act, not the person. Bear that in mind. If you have disdain towards a person, think about maybe the good attributes that person's got as well. That single act doesn't define the person as a whole. That's really what that is saying. Yeah? Okay, everyone has the brain capacity to think for themselves. We cannot be made to feel or behave in particular ways by others. That's so true. And we need to snap out of the habit of, she made me feel this way, he made me feel that way. No, they didn't. You feel the way you do by virtue of how you process the world. Because somebody might do something to me now, and I might laugh my head off. Somebody in here might take exception to it. We'd all have a different reaction, and that's because we'll process it differently. Okay? So we feel the way we do by virtue of how we process incoming information or the world. Okay? Feelings are born within us. They're not out there. Nobody can physically stick a feeling inside of us. They can initiate feeling within us. But we've got to subscribe to it ultimately. Why I'm saying that is that this will give you power. Your family now, Tracy, can't make you feel anyway because you're growing now. You've got insight to what is. And you've got a choice today to change the way you feel. Okay, we did briefly look at the stages of competence. It takes time to change. We'll fall back into the old thinking habits. And we need to have mindfulness in order to rectify that. And that will eventually change the way we feel. So I don't want anybody to think, oh yeah, we just change our feelings. I think often we used to do an experiment in the class where we simply say, close your eyes and think of something sad. And all of a sudden everyone feels really sad. And say, okay, now close your eyes and think of something happy. And next minute people are laughing and whatever. What changed? Their thoughts. Yeah. That's how powerful these, simple but powerful. Everything in psychology. You can go and do these degrees and doctorates, and I've sort of been down that path to a certain extent. And I didn't learn a lot, if I'm being quite honest with you. I've learned a damn sight more when I go on holiday on my own, and I monitor, I actually have the mindfulness of what is it that's making me feel fantastic right now? You know, what is it that is inspiring me? That gives me a lot more knowledge about myself than any book or doctorate. Or believe me, we get lots of people who've got PhDs do these courses, psychologists do these courses, and they don't learn what you're learning right now. I promise you that. And if you go onto the website, you will see, I think we've still got some reviews by people like that on there as well, psychologists and whatever. Okay, so everybody has the brain capacity to think for themselves. We cannot be made to feel or behave in particular ways by others or by our surroundings. We are responsible for our own feelings and behaviour. We feel the way we do. Oh, I've actually put that line in there. By virtue of how we process the world. Does that make sense to everybody? Crucial you understand that. Feelings are born within us. So information comes in. What's been said to us will be absorbed. And depending on what we've been through in the past, a feeling will emerge from that. And different things are going to affect different people more. Is this making sense to you now, Tracy? Is it switching light bulbs on in here? That's good. Tracy's been really good since we've done this stuff, by the way, in the last couple of weeks, so that's good news as well. People decide to be the way they are. Okay, this is a bit cruel in a way. The decisions that we made in childhood, strategies that were the best ways we could work out as infants to survive and get what we wanted from the world, which may have seemed hostile, may still determine how we feel and behave today. That's the problem. If we're still using the life script, I'll explain a bit more about that later, that we devised as children. When we're children, judging on what experiences we have, we devise ways of navigating through life. Okay? A quick example might be that somebody wasn't getting attention, so they used to scream the house down, and the parents would come running in, and then now they can't form relationships because they're needy and they're still screaming the house down when the partner goes out of the room. They're living on the life scripts that were devised and formulated when they were children, and they've outgrown them. And we do this a lot. People who come for counselling do it a lot as well. Okay, so we can trace the decisions and change them for new and more appropriate decisions. These decisions can be changed. Okay, so when we're young, we devise what's known as a life script. Ways, again, to negotiate our way through life, to navigate our way through life, that work for us when we're children. But often the very life script that we devise when we're young, that's formulated young, lots of people are still doing when they're 60, 70, you know, and that's when things start to go wrong. They become stuck in their childhood ways of being, if you want to put it that way. We'll expand on all this, don't we? So transactional analysis is rooted in the anti-deterministic philosophy. Remember when we talked about determinism? Do you remember we had that conversation? I think we mostly decided that we all subscribe to a soft determinism, whereas a lot of things are determined by our childhood experiences, but we can evolve them things. So to a certain degree, our life is shaped by childhood experience, but as we get older, anti-deterministic means that we can actually change that. If it was hard determinism, we wouldn't be able to change it. That's the way we'd be throughout life. But this is anti-deterministic, which means that it doesn't subscribe to that. It says, yes, the human being might devise a life script when they're young, but they can change that when they go through life. We can evolve. That's all that's saying. It places faith in our capacity to rise above habit patterns and to select new goals and behaviour. That's got to be true. I've seen that so many times. However, this does not mean that we are free from the influences of social forces. It acknowledges that we are influenced by the expectations and demands of significant others, especially because our early decisions were made at a time in life when we were highly dependent on others. Okay, and that's why I think it's a bit cruel to say that, you know, we chose this way of being. I see why they use words very important, because when we say we chose this way of being, it empowers us. It's not something that's happened to us. It's something that we've done ourselves. If we've done something ourselves, we can undo it. So they use that word choose to empower us. But let's face it, when we're children, we haven't got the critical faculty of the mind. Therefore, we can't repel stuff. We do take everything on board. And I think within that as well, the expectations and demands of significant others, we've got to have conditions of worth, which is from person-centred. Okay? You know, we love you if you carry on getting your high grades at school, but that kid didn't want to carry on getting high grades at school. She wanted to be a musician. Okay? And when she gets to 35, she's suffering from depression, because she's still trying to get them high grades in a job. And she doesn't want to do that, she wants to be a musician. Do you see what I mean? There's a lot of conditions of worth come under influences of significant others as well. Okay, nothing too new there yet. We're going to watch that in the second spot tonight. Right, so what is a transaction? We're talking here about transactional analysis. What is a transaction? How do you, I've seen so many different ways to define a transaction. How do you define it, Julie? How would you define it loosely? A transaction in transactional analysis? It's not so much thought about a lot, is it? Yeah.
For me, it's about the process that happens between two people.
Yes, that's precisely really. I've just seen different, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot there.
No.
I've seen so many different definitions of the transaction. This is the one I like most of all, and you see why. So, what is a transaction? The unit of social intercourse is called a transaction. Okay, that's a bit, the language is a bit vague there. If two or more people encounter each other, sooner or later, one of them will speak, okay? Or give some other indication of acknowledging the presence of others. This is called the transactional stimulus. So if I say to Julie, how are you doing, Julie? That's a transactional stimulus. It's inviting Julie to speak to me, okay? Right. Another person will then say or do something which is in some way related to the stimulus, and this is called a transactional response. So my answer to Julie is the transactional response. So transactions, if you like, are units of speech to each other, of communication to each other. Hello, how are you doing? That's a transaction. I'm doing fine, actually. How are you? That's a response. They're all transactions. Transactional analysis is exactly what it says. It's analysing then patterns of communication between people. Does that make sense? I'm going to expand on it. It'll make more sense soon. Okay. So at its simplest level, transactional analysis is the method for studying interactions between individuals. Okay. I often wonder why it's not called interactional analysis. It doesn't sound like that, does it? But I think Bain gave the definition, which I don't totally agree with. I think he said that the difference between interaction and transaction is that we have an investment in a transaction. But I'd say we probably have an investment in an interaction as well. But that's by the by. So scripts. Here we're going to look at life scripts. This, I think, is already up on the website, this PowerPoint. But I've updated it slightly today, so tomorrow I'll put it on the newer one. The theory of life script has a central place in transactional analysis. Bain describes a life script as a pre-conscious life plan to which people construct their activities, lives and relationships. That's what we were talking before. Judging on what experiences and significant others and what messages, particularly messages we receive as children, then we'll devise a plan to get us through life. Just hold on to that for a moment. According to this theory, fundamental decisions about an individual's entire lifespan are formulated at a very early age. Again, some people make decisions way back in childhood. Most people, make decisions way back in childhood and are still abiding by that plan 50 years later when it's not working. Because they're not aware of what's driving them because it's unconscious. And what's our biggest job, or one of our biggest jobs as a therapist? Exactly. Right. So scripts are based on parental conditioning and influences. And they come under two categories. Winning scripts, so ones that are working for you, why change them if they're still working? And losing scripts. These script types are closely associated with another TA concept. The OK positions. Okay, we'll come to that in a minute. The OK positions represent a variety of convictions which people adopt and adhere to from childhood through life. There are 4 basic OK positions from which games and scripts arrive. They are as follows. Okay, these are very much tied in to attachment theory here as well. Very, very closely related. So the life positions are, they sound a bit silly when you first hear them. I'm okay, you're okay. There's a fantastic book by that name, bestseller. It's well worth reading if you want to get well into transactional analysis. If you want a fun book to read, get one called Counselling for Toads. And it's the story of Wind in the Willows. And that's all about transactional analysis, but that's a bit more fun. If you want an academic approach to it, which is extremely good, I'm okay, you're okay is the one. Okay? Okay. And Counselling for Toads is the other one. So we look at these, we break these down. I'll show that video, I'll come back to that. I'll tell you what, no, I'll show this video now. Okay, so one of the things he's talking about there is, it's a neurolinguistic program concept actually. The map is not the territory. What do they mean by that? Did anybody get an inclination into what's meant by that?
Predetermined maps.
Yes. What it's saying is basically we're given these messages as children, and through them we formulate what you might call a map of the world internally. But that map is distorted. The map is not the territory. The territory is reality. So what they're saying, the map that we devise so that we can navigate through the world, the one that we construct when we're children internally, is not reality. It's distorted. That's what they're saying there. Let's just move on. Don't worry about injunctions and permissions. They're not too important to us. The other stuff is. So what is a life script and why is it important? Okay, it's a set of decisions that are formulated in answer to our experiences as children. Okay? Or in response, to our experiences as children. So here we go. Made in response to script messages about self, others and the world. Remember attachment theory when we touched on it vaguely. And we were saying that the child who is given attention by the mother, if the mother's there for the child, feels that it's worthy of being loved. That is an example of a non-communicated script message. Therefore, if the mother isn't there for the child, we don't know, but there's quite a lot of evidence around to suggest that that child will start to get the script message. I'm using transactional analysis terminology now. That I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. Even at that young age, the pre-linguistic age, before it could talk. And then you can see how fragile that child is when, for instance, it may ask a question to a parent and the parent may be unresponsive, and the way the child interprets that, or the script commands, be quiet. So when that child grows up, it doesn't have a voice in the world, because it's still adhering to their script commands, script attributions. You're absolutely stupid. And they believe that at that age. And when they're 35 and 40, their life is amounting to nothing, because they still believe that they're stupid, which is a script message, a script attribution, to be more precise, that they receive as children. Can you see how this fits hand in glove with object relations theory? If you think about these as being negative or positive objects, and the messages they give us, the significant others that we've still internalised, are not left somewhere in the past. Because the past, the present, and to some degree the future lay within us right now. Okay? The past is within us, we carry it around with us. The present is here, obviously, and the past and present give rise to the future. So, in many ways, the past, present, and the future reside within us right now. But it's just programming. It can be undone, it can be changed. Script messages come mainly from the child's parents. Okay, initially, yes. But then they may go to infant school, and then they may have to go to sort of religious establishments. Then there's peers at school, there's teachers, there's all sorts of people that come in, isn't it? Authoritative type people that start to give messages to these children. And a lot of the time, there's a lot of shadow projection that goes on in life. A lot of the time, these messages that are coming from these so-called authoritative or significant others are really displacement or shadow projection of their own woes, if you like. They're nothing to do with the definition of the child. They're just getting rid of the crap, as we all do at times. But that affects us, really affects us. We're very, very sensitive to them type of messages when we're children. So I hope you can see now that transactional analysis, attachment theory, and object relations, or psychodynamics, psychoanalysis, all fit hand in glove. This part in particular is not too much different than anything that you've learned in object relations. It does get different now. Okay. The messages are formed from the child's response to what is happening in their environment. These don't always reflect the world as it is. They are often distorted. You've seen some of their examples there before. We could generalise it. Say we've been abused as a child, maybe not physically abused, but say we've been abused emotionally, mentally. We might then form the view that let's say it was by the father, all men are bad, stay away from them. Okay, say that was a woman, and he can't form close, intimate relationships with people because they're still living by that life script, which actually they're going by the map, not the territory. They're going by an internal response. And again, as therapists, if we're working with them, if they were emotionally, let's say, emotionally abandoned, so they weren't getting the attention, they weren't abused, but they weren't getting the attention maybe from the children, from the parents, then we can then start to work with them and say, well, look, what were your parents going through? We can educate them as to the map that we form internally as children is not reality, it's often distorted due to the way that child interprets things. So your mum and dad, they were professional people, they had to be away a lot, so you were left with a babysitter, and you've internalised, that they didn't love you. Is that correct? That could be one example. Their parents may well have loved the children, but they may have been very, professional people focused on the job, and that damages children at times. So there's lots of things we can look into there. NLP, the map is not the territory, we've discussed that. However, this map forms the basis for how one navigates the trails of life, regardless of how accurate it is. Script messages, verbal and non-verbal, or a combination. So again, you see, the non-verbal ones can be literally, the child asks a question, is ignored. Or it might be that the parents are busy at the time. I'm sure the mothers in this room, the fathers in this room have been that way. The children's pestering you and they want an answer to a question, and you're busy cooking or something like that. So you don't give them that attention. That's all right. It's when they're permanently not getting that attention where they've got to be affected, because they've got to start getting these messages that I'm okay. I'm not okay, but you're okay. This is where the okay positions start to come in, which we'll look at in a second as well. Okay. Infants can decode non-verbal cues and develop a script before speech. For example, care by the mother is interpreted as I love you. That's typical attachment theory, and that's probably come from the John Bowlby stuff. I think it did actually. So, script comes from modelling parents. How many of you can see, even now, traits in yourselves, with your own children maybe, that your parents had? Yeah? It's amazing, isn't it? Because when we go through the imprint period from between 0 and 7, next between 8 and 13 becomes the modelling stage, where we model others. We learn by modelling others. Okay? Script comes from, oftentimes, if the child is stroke deprived by parents, he will turn to peers. Do we all know what a stroke is? Okay, it's not when your face goes funny and you're looking for Melissa to come and help you out. A stroke is praise, basically, to put it very simple. We're looking for praise of parents. That's what a stroke is. And a negative stroke can be quite the opposite thing. So that can be when sort of somebody treats you with disdain, puts you down. But strokes, when we refer to strokes, ego strokes, we all need them now. I would say one thing I've noticed in my life, as I get older, praise from other people is not as important as it was. It doesn't mean it's not important. Your thoughts and feelings on this course, when you tell me about it, are very important to me. And, we have had the odd occasion where somebody's complained about something, and I go away and think about that, believe me. It's not happened very much, actually, and it's normally been as a matter of somebody else's issues. But I still look at it. So I can't say I don't care what other people think, but I don't care as nowhere near as much as when I did when I was 15, 16, 18. Okay. And in psychology, they call this internal and external checks. So a lot of people, as they're growing up, are looking for external checks. That's reinforcement that they're doing well from other people. That's a stroke. If they're getting strokes from other people, it might be, God, you've done that fantastic. Or, you just run that marathon. I couldn't do that. That's absolutely excellent. They're all strokes. In a sense, the messages, aren't they, as well? The script messages. And attributions as well. These all construct the self. The self is a psychological construction that is constructed primarily through other people's opinions about us in the first instance. As we get older, if we were lucky and we get insight and we get mindfulness and we understand ourselves, we can unsubscribe from the good opinions of people in our past and live life the way we want to do, which is the whole essence, really, of self-development. Okay. Parents play the primary role in scripting. So here's some examples before we stop for a break. A little boy's brother dies. Every week the parents go to the cemetery to lay flowers. The little boy could interpret this as the deceased child means more to them than he does, leading to the script messages: I would be loved more if I were dead. I am not worthy. I am not valued. Maybe, that certainly could happen. That could equally happen, that if a child was ignored by the parents constantly. Take that, I don't think that's the best of examples, that really. Take that away and think about parents who are very busy because they've got busy jobs and they're not giving the child the strokes. The child needs that attention. That could be interpreted as I am not worthy and I am not valued. But that's the map. That's the child's internal belief. And the actual territory, the reality, might be totally different. It might be that, again, it might be that they're professional people, They love the jobs as well. But they love the children equally. They just don't show it in maybe physical ways, which will harm the child. Of course, this is not what the parents are trying to communicate, but the child is not analysing the situation. It hasn't got the ability to... This is called the critical factor when we look at hypnotherapy and whatever. It hasn't got these rational, logical and adult faculties to rationalise what's going on. That child can't turn around and say, well, my mum and dad are professional people, therefore they have, they have to give some priority to their work. They still love me though, I will get on with what I'm doing. That's not, the child is not going to do that. Maybe the adult can do that later on. Okay? So, these are what we mean by script messages, verbal, non-verbal. Okay? And how we internalise them, and how this starts to create the mental veil of distortion between us and reality. And that mental veil of distortion, in NLP terms, is the map. Okay, that distorts our view of reality. Verbal agents of script formation, so commands, do what you're told. So these are commands, probably we've all done this with children as well. So script commands, the child is told what he or she should do. Okay? Do what you're told. So the child does what he is told to get his parents' approval. Okay? So again, to some degree here, we've got, the child trying to live up to what the parent wants, sort of conditions of worth are coming in there. This may lead to him becoming submissive in later life and being used. Can you see what I'm saying? These are the type of things that go on in a child's mind that later has negative effects. So again, do what you're told. If a child is told constantly, do what you're told, do what you're told, do what you're told, do what you're told, the chances are when it grows up, it's going to be very submissive. And that might have deleterious effects on that child's life. Okay? So, and then he may also adopt a life position. We haven't done these, but we're going to do them. They're coming up soon. You're okay, but I'm not okay. Okay? And they sound a bit silly, I think, the okay position, but they're very powerful. So they're getting their messages all the time. Okay? And that leads the child to think, well, you're okay, everyone else is okay, but I'm not okay. It's powerful stuff, it really is. Another one, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, can lead to a child being full of anxiety later on in life. Because they think they've got to be early for everything. They think they've got to do everything at the speed of light. Don't be naughty all the time can lead to conformity. So we can see the ties from childhood to adulthood in little ways here. But imagine that happening all day long. The complexity of what's going on in that child's mind and the way things are being formulated in that child's mind. So this is called script formation. It's also due to the non-verbal communication which accompanies these statements. Obviously body language plays probably a bigger part in communication than does words. I think they say something like 70% of our communication is body language. So, verbal agents of script formation. So these are attributions. The child is being told what he is, not what to do here, or what she is. You're stupid. So they grow up with low self-esteem, believing everyone is more intelligent than you. She may also adopt a life position, you're okay again, but I'm not okay. There's 4 life positions that we'll look at. You can't do anything right. Again, you hear that. Low self-esteem, no belief in themselves. You're good at maths. They value themselves. I'm okay. You're okay. That's the good position in a sense. That's where, we've all got that within us somewhere, but that's what we really want to establish when we're using transactional analysis. This life position of I'm okay, you're okay. Okay. Attributions can be obviously positive or negative. Verbal agents of script formation. So is indirect attributions what they were talking about before? The parent talks about the child in third person. One of mine was, I used to hear, because I was always a little clown when I was younger, and although you don't see much of it in this capacity from me, I'm still like that. He'll tell me that. Outside of it, I'm still a little boy who makes people laugh all day long. And that's because I used to do that when my extended family were all in the 2 up, 2 down in Old Shannon Road and Old Swan, and there was loads of them. I used to run into the middle of them and do things and they'd all laugh at me. Now that's like a stroke to a child. So in my head, I thought, if the belief I formulated, if I make people laugh, then I'm a good person. I'm okay, they're okay. Okay, so, and then I would hear people saying, oh, our Paul will be in there, he's such a good laugh, he makes me laugh. And then I'd go to the pub, and this carried on through my life. Oh, Paul will be here, he'll cheer us up in a minute. But then I sort of got moulded into this clown to the expense of not ever telling anybody what was really going on inside of me. So I was repressing a lot of stuff. But I can see from a very, very early age, through all of these type of attributions, especially this one, indirect attributions, that I wanted to live, I wanted to please people, which we all do when we're young. And one of the ways I used to do it was by making people laugh. And I still do it today. It's something that works in my life today. But if I'm in a bad mood, people know about it pretty quickly. My psyche, if you like, my whole being is fluid today. So if I'm sad, people will know I cry. I mean, a couple of times on holiday, I was overwhelmed with the Northern Lights and this bloody waterfall I've seen that light. And the tears were coming down my face. I didn't try to hide it. I just thought, I'm alive. When they happen, I know I'm alive. Emotions are the universe's way of saying life is flowing through you. And so yeah, Johnny is so funny. Here's one. I didn't even understand. Plays the clown in order to be praised.
I used to do that, Paul, make people laugh with
yeah.
attention because I never got what I was doing.
Exactly, and they're all things, and then we get the stroke, if you like, the ego stroke, so we do it more. We're getting our needs met, we're getting attention. That's more what's meant really by attributions, indirect or direct. Johnny is a pain in the arse, but we love him. I don't know why I didn't put art in there, but we love him. In later life, it becomes disruptive in order to get attention. Yeah? I think that was me as well. Hearing these messages repetitively leads to the child's script formation. Are we all getting an idea what script is about? Yeah, that's good. I think at that point, I think we should have a break. Life positions. You're a bastard, I'm a bastard. I think you've used that one a few times, haven't you? Right, not really now. Okay, so I hope we're sort of getting the idea now about how the self is constructed or formulated in childhood through these messages, through the script, through objects, real life people that we've internalised who continue to chatter in our head and to condemn us if we're not wise enough to wake up. Most people in life, in my experience from watching people, live it somnambulistically. I can't even say that. Well, basically, somnambulism is the deepest form of trance. It's used quite often in the context of sleepwalking, you may have heard it. That's somnambulism. They don't wake up. And, for years I taught spiritual courses, nothing to do with religion, but spiritual courses. And you hear all of these things, enlightenment, seeing light, and this, that, and the other. Today I believe enlightenment is the process of bringing information from the darkness of our unconscious into the light of our conscious mind. And an enlightened person is not somebody who sees light. I don't think Buddha would call himself an enlightened person, you know, everybody else would. Oh, no, that's all right. Sorry, it's all right, Michelle. That's okay. So an enlightened person, for me, is somebody who knows themselves, if you want to put it that way. Okay? So, hearing these messages repetitively leads the child to the child's script formation. Okay. Script decisions can also result from a single abusive or traumatic event. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be from numerous experiences. This is probably maybe not as common as the build-up of the smaller messages, but if somebody was abused, let's say by the father, they can then adopt the position, if you like, or make the general assumption that all men are evil. Okay? So that is, it's not about the perpetrator of the abuse, it's about the quality of life of our client. So we're not trying to condone or justify what this abusive person's done, and we're not trying to make that right either. What we're trying to point out is that because that happened in that one incident, it shouldn't be generalised onto all people in general. And you get a lot of that with people who've been abused that can't forge relationships with other people. I shouldn't use the word can't. Cognitive behaviourally, that's not a good word to use. They won't because they have an investment in not forging relationships. They're terrified, quite frankly. So, this may hold severe connotations for her when she tries to forge relationships later on. She could also make this generalisation based on a constant negative verbal and non-verbal cues from a father. So both of them things can lead to that life script. That one's probably the more common one that we're going to come over. And these people won't know why they're the way they are. These ones might. These ones probably will. You've probably seen both of them, Tracy, as probably a lot of them ones have as well. Okay? But you can throw all that in the bin now and move forward. Psychological positions, no, we'll come back to them next week. I'll talk about them first. Okay, so here are the 4 psychological positions, or life positions as they're known, in transactional analysis. I'm okay, you're okay. This is the healthy position. It doesn't mean we think everybody's great and we're great as well. It's not. It's a very balanced position to come from. And if we were to go to attachment theory, this would be the baby who's had good enough parenting, not been spoiled, or not had too much attention, because they can equally grow up just as bad as people who've had no attention at all, or let's say as disrupted, not as bad. Okay. The most positive, so the most positive position, based on the conviction that every person has worth and value. An infant who is cared for is likely to imbibe feelings of goodness, which, if the quality of care continues, will last a lifetime. Feelings of goodness about self are then translated into feelings of goodness about others too. Problems tend to arise later in childhood when the parents and others become more critical and demanding. When this happens, the I'm okay, you're okay position of an earlier era may be questioned and the original conviction of worth may be lost. So, can we see that judging on the experiences we have as children, we'll adopt a certain way of thinking, a certain way of believing, a belief about the world in general. This is called a life position in transactional analysis. And the most healthy one, the stable one, the balanced type of person will come from the operating position of I'm okay, you're okay. It doesn't mean they won't experience the other ones. It means fundamentally they'll operate from this one. You know, most of us in here probably operate from that. But there's times when we say, you know, I'm okay, but you're not okay. And probably vice versa at times as well. So traits. The person coming from the I'm okay, you're okay position is accepting of others. Accept that life is not always fair or perfect. Believes everyone can fend for themselves. Don't interfere in other people's lives unless asked. What we're talking about there really is balance. That's all, simply put. They're quite balanced people. So now we'll go to this one. I'm okay, you're not okay. Okay, so this may come from, well, let's have a look. Mistrust of others as a result of a less than perfect childhood leads to arrogance. So this is one way you can go. The traits of these people, they rarely admit they're wrong. They have all the answers. They won't listen to others. Their angry, defiant child say they don't need anyone. Okay, so here, the childhood hasn't been good. In a way, I would say there's probably a lot of repression. It's this attitude, we don't need anybody else. But here it's manifested itself in an arrogance. Okay. And if you think about attachment theory and the different states the child gets into, remember the child that the child, the attachment styles that the child adopts. So for instance, if they haven't had the attention they need, they might learn to fend for themselves. So they become ambivalent, whether the mother's in the room or not, they couldn't care less. Whereas if they've got a positive attachment, a strong attachment, if the mother went out of the room, they screen the room down. And if somebody else comes in to soothe them, they won't soothe them. These are sort of manifestations, if you like, of them as well. They're very closely linked, which we'll see soon. What the positions mean, okay. So now, I'm okay, you're okay. I'm not okay, sorry, you're okay. So the first two, I'm okay, you're okay, the healthy position. I'm okay, you're not okay, is the paranoid type person. Okay. They rarely learn to sort of trust only themselves, and that manifests as arrogance. But inside that, there's going to be a frightened child, mark my words. Okay. Next, I'm not okay, but you're okay. Right. The depressive position. So much learning is done in childhood. This position emerges as a result of negative feedback from parents, and in extreme cases, neglect and abuse. Neglect and abuse mainly manifests as nuances, if you like, in the way parents communicate to the child. It doesn't have to be abuse, just negative feedback. Again, think of script attributions. You're stupid, you'll amount to nothing, you're ugly, you're a no mark, it's all of them type of things that will imprint on the child. Okay. So here, when the child receives that many of these attributions, if you like, it's going to adopt the belief that I'm not okay, but everybody else is okay. Yeah? The traits, the vulnerable, wounded, needy child. Everything is my fault. They people please, because if I say no, you may leave me. They're full of shame. My needs are not as important as your needs. They're usually sad and depressed. It's all about others. Acts as a caretaker or a rescuer to them. So you can see it's almost this subordinate type position, isn't it, they adopt. They're not as good as other people. And this has come directly from their messages, script messages. Okay, so just to distinguish, script messages are the messages that come from the other people. They can be overt, communicated, or they can be implicit, if you like. Whereas, you know, the father doesn't give it the attention to the son, therefore the son adopts a belief. The father, I'm not worthy of the father's attention, therefore I'm not worthy of anything. It can get more general. It's them type of things. And they give rise to the life script, and that's the way they operate in the world then. So they may become almost transparent. They'll never stand up for themselves, they'll never put themselves forward. Other people will always become before them. This is why it's important. People will present these sorts of problems to you as the presenter problem. And the inexperienced counsellor will say, or let's say the lay person out there, will say, well, I don't know where to go with that. You do know where to go with it. Talk to them about that, exhaust the present situation, and then go and look for the answers in the past. Next, I'm okay, you're not okay. I'm not okay, you're not okay. This is the bad one. This one is the real bad one. This one is suicidal sort of tendencies, futile position. Normally attributed to abuse or neglect, dysfunction during childhood. The traits of these people are severe mood swings, vacillates between angry, defiant child and vulnerable, needy child. Blow up on friends and family and regret it afterwards. Okay, we've seen all this before. This is basically, what this describes here is the emergence of repressed material. Okay, what come over me then? The unconscious is the motivation for their actions, and they don't understand what's going on in their unconscious. All they're doing is witnesses the actions which they don't understand. And then that can also give them the belief, I'm a bad person. Although they don't remember what's given rise to this dysfunction. And we do that. Now it should all be fitting into place. We have to go explore and understand. We've said this many times. We explore through open-ended questions. We might challenge. We might use closed questions. We'll use our tag questions. Is that right? Does that feel right to you? We'll check out with the client that our interpretations are correct. Because they're not always correct. But use your inclination, your intuition. It's one of your best assets. Okay, here's the comparison with attachment styles here. Okay, so if we just go through these attachment styles and just think about the information that we've just been through. Okay, so attachment style. These again is attachment theory. So the secure. The child who's had these secure attachments where the mother's been there as a secure base from which they can explore the world. The mother's been there for them. So they're aligned with the child, in tune with the child's emotions. Okay? Resultant adult characteristics, able to create meaningful relationships, they're empathetic. They can understand where other people are coming from. They're able to set appropriate boundaries. They won't let people walk all over them. Okay, they do have self-esteem. The avoidance, now this attachment style, avoidance, will normally come from where the child's had no real attention from the mother. Okay, so they avoid relationships. The relationship with the mother, they very often learn to fend for themselves. So these are unavailable or rejected as they get older. It's staying parental style there. So this may be how they act as a parent, okay? So this results in the adult's characteristics of avoids closeness or emotional connection, the distant, critical, rigid, intolerant. These are probably defence mechanisms to push people away because they've never had that love as a child. They've never had that secure attachment as a child. They often fear it. Okay? So they themselves may then become unavailable or reject their parents because they're afraid of that closeness even with their own children. And as the children grow up, this begins to perpetuate, and you'll find, see the way it goes, and you'll see this quite often from generation to generation when you start exploring. Ambivalence. So this is once you've had inconsistent messages from the parent. The parents, when they were a baby and infant, the parent was inconsistent in the messages they give to them. So they become what's known as ambivalence. They can swing between different polarities. So inconsistent and sometimes intrusive parent communication. These become anxious and insecure, controlling, blaming, erratic, unpredictable, and sometimes charming. So there's no rule of thumb there. You can become anything. That's what ambivalent means. Okay? Disorganised. So ignored or didn't see child's needs. Parental behaviour was frightening, traumatised. Okay? Again, so the disorganised one you don't see as much, to be quite honest with you. But these people who've had this sort of attachment, this will give you some indication of what their childhood was like. Even though their parental style, this may be their parental style when they have children, but they're modelling from their own parents. So this will give you an indication of what their parents were like as well. So they were ignored or they weren't seen as a child. Okay? The parental behaviour could be frightening or even traumatising. So they become very disorganised. The traits of these are basically chaotic, insensitive, explosive, abusive, untrusting, even while craving security. Okay? Bear in mind, in object relations, the primary purpose of the human being is to forge relationships with others. And I do an awful lot of, let's say, self-exploration. And I test these theories. I don't just read the book and say, yeah, and then go spouting off what just somebody else has just taught me. I put these theories to test in my own life. And what is the most important thing in my life? I'm a person who needs a vast amount of time alone. I told you this before, that's why I've never entered it. Sorry, I've been in many relationships, but I haven't been in one for a long time because they don't work, because I need a lot of time on my own. But still, the most important thing in my life, even though I need that vast amount of time, is relationships with other people. Without that, life wouldn't be worth living. So these crave that security, they crave that attachment to other people, but you'll find that in some ways they'll be destructive. Their defence mechanisms will be rigid. They'll push people away, and they'll do it by these things, being abusive, explosive. The person who's explosive, the person who's violent, quite often isn't a bad person, but a person who's psychologically damaged, and there's reasons for it. That's why, if we go back to the beginning, we should always judge the act, not the person. And that's how you work with people who've been abused as children and still love the parents. Quite a lot of them don't, but most of them do underneath all of that harsh, experience. They still love the parents. And that's why you say, judge their actions. Their actions were caused through what happened to them, but that doesn't define them as a person completely. Okay? And we used to sometimes have a debate of, is there any such thing as an inherently evil person that are born evil? And, it brings up wonderful things. I swing towards, no, there isn't. That people are moulded into their evilness. But, there's even an argument against that. Finally, reactive. So, these are parenting style. The parents have been extremely unattached or malfunctioning. So the parents themselves may have been malfunctioning. Say I'd had the children in the height of my alcoholism. As much as I think I would have made a very good dad, whatever, I certainly wouldn't have done in them days. And if I was to bring a child up under them circumstances, you know, that could lead to this. So these type of children cannot establish positive relationships and often misdiagnosed, I don't know what often misdiagnosed means there, but can't establish positive relationships. A lot of these things lead to difficulties in forming relationships with other people. That's what a lot of this is about. Not just romantic relationships, but friendships as well, which are equally as important. Important note, it is possible for all of us to move from one position to another depending on life circumstances. However, a fundamental I'm okay, you're okay position, which is established in childhood, is never totally obscured, even in the most adverse of life conditions. So if that's happened when you're a child, we can recover it most of the time. Okay? I think I've done enough talking there, and I think what we'll do is we'll go to the psychological positions video.